Sunday mornings at 8 a.m. Get all the details from Rider alum as they navigate their most difficult challenge yet. Life after graduation. It's Alumni in Action on 107.7 The Bronc. Your home for everything beyond graduation at Rider University. Join your hosts Dan and Kadie as they talk with our alum about where they are today and more. Alumni in Action starts now on 107.7 The Bronc.
Welcome to another edition of Alumni in Action. I am your host, Kadie DiGiuseppe, and I'm also the student general manager here at 107.7 The Bronc. Joining me, as always, is my co-host, Dan Logis.
Hello, everybody.
Yes, we love to have Dan on the show.
Of course.
He's my fave. So then, luckily, also joining us today after some technical difficulties, and he bared with us so kindly, is Bob Giuquinto, a Rider University alum from the class of 2013. To go in a little bit more about Bob, during his time at the Bronc, he was at first the assistant programming director and then the programming director for the following 2 years. And then aside from the Bronc, Bob was also a member of Alpha Phi Omega, the pep band at Rider, and Rider University Network while pursuing his undergraduate degree. He graduated with a bachelor's degree in radio, television, and digital communication. And he also claimed his associate's degree in the business of sports, which I'm very, very excited to hear how you use that, Bob. And shortly after that, when graduating from Rider, he continued his career as a play-by-play broadcaster with Rider Athletics for the Bronc as well. And he covered Rider hockey. Along with working at Rider, he also worked for WBCB, which is based out of Pennsylvania. You guys know about WBCB. We've talked about WBCB. We've had those WBCB people on here. He was there for about 5 or so years and held roles like play-by-play broadcaster, color analyst, audio video engineer, and an on-air personality, which he also held right here in these studios. And while doing all of that, he joined Town Square Media as a promotions and marketing coordinator, then moving to a disc jockey, multimedia producer, campaign manager, and finally, the director of marketing and promotions. Oh my goodness, Bob, you've done so much. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I've done a little bit in my career
Just
for a bunch of different places. Just, little tiny bit, but definitely a lot.
Yeah.
Quite the laundry list.
Oh, yeah. Laundry list. We're going to hop right into our questions for you, Bob, because I'm quite excited to talk to you. The last two people I've known a little bit too much about, so I'm excited to get to know you a little bit more. So Fair. If you can take us back, kind of starting from the beginning, I'm curious to know, when did you join the Bronc and what was that decision to kind of make you want to join? Because your major is fitting to join the Bronc, but was there something that that really made you want to join, like maybe a person or an event that you went to that really made you want to join the Bronc?
Yeah. So actually, even before when I was in high school, a friend of mine did a senior, basically like a senior shadowing kind of project. Mm-hmm. And she got to sit in with a radio station up in New York, and seeing that, I'm like, oh man, that's kind of cool. And I've always wanted to or been interested in being in radio, on air, that sort of thing. And I talked to her about it, and she said, oh, I'm going to this school, and she wasn't going for radio, but I'm like, oh well, I know I'm going to Rider already. I want to be in radio, so why not? Let me sign up for it. So I went in for the admitted students day that Rider had, and the Bronc had a table there. And I'd gone up, and there were some other students working the table, and I pretty much got in right then and there. Signed up for a show, started doing that show for my first, pretty much the first week on campus. I had my first radio show and kind of went at it from there.
Yeah, perfect.
That's awesome. That's I think a lot of us have very similar stories. I know it's a very similar story to what I went through, where just right off the bat, I was like, I want to get into radio. And I didn't know I wanted to do radio, but there was something that really pulled me towards it. So I think it's a very fitting story for a lot of people. But since you joined, what were some of the, important lessons that you learned during your time? You served as the assistant programming director and then the 2-time programming director. So what are some of those things that you learned from there? What are some things you learned from being an on-air personality, and just, all the things that came along with being here doing radio?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing that I learned working in radio is one of those mediums where it's so wide reaching, but it's also a very personal experience to listen to radio, because, I may talk into the microphone and we may have, hundreds of thousands of people listening to any of the radio stations. But at the same time, even though there's hundreds of thousands of people listening, I'm still making that connection with that one singular listener, whoever it is driving in the car. It's making that connection with that one specific listener. So I could say, oh, hey, there's, some traffic on Route 1 right now. Let me know what you're seeing. I may be saying that to, the 100,000 whatever people that are listening, but that one person sitting in the car is saying, you know what? Here's what I'm seeing. They call up the radio station and they give their report, and it's that personal connection. Actually, just today, I was going through and giving out the tickets to some of our winners, and I gave one winner a pair of tickets to see Ed Sheeran. Ooh. The winner emails me back and she says, oh, thank you so much for these tickets. I'm taking my 9-year-old daughter to her first concert, and this is her first concert. Thank you so much.
Wow.
That's awesome.
It's that personal touch that you get with radio that you can't get anywhere else. And that's kind of what I have really picked up on, and starting with, all the different events that we did when I was at Rider. I mean, we did the Top Chef contest, which I think you guys still do now.
Yep.
And this is all pre, Excellent Egg Hunt. This is pre the Scream Screen and all that kind of thing. But I mean, just having that connection with listeners it's pretty cool. And that's the one thing that I still love even today.
Yeah. You mentioned it too, and I have planned to ask you about this. While you were here at the Bronc, you did host a morning show. First question, have you heard of Wake Up Rider?
I have heard of Wake Up Rider, yes.
They're all right. They've won a couple awards. We keep them around.
One or two. They can stay on the air, I guess.
And you kind of just mentioned in that answer there, like some things you may have discussed on your morning show. But I'm just more so curious because I do listen to Wake Up Rider, especially when I'm here. I'll be listening to it in the mornings. So maybe like what were some of the kind of things that you would discuss? Did you have co-host? Because there's a lot of people on this show now on Wake Up Rider. There's like a lot of things going on at once.
Yeah, so we when I was at Rider, our morning show was the Three Best Friends show.
Oh, nice.
And it started out as myself and two other people, which we quickly added a fourth person. And I think by the time the other people on the show graduated, and they graduated after me, I think there were somewhere around 6 or 7 people on the show. So the running joke was always, all right, who are the 3 best friends and who are just acquaintances? And I mean, we would talk about pretty much anything pop culture. We'd always do our show prep beforehand and just looking to see what matters to people, what other people are talking about. And, maybe not so much, Rider things, but what's the internet talking about? What's going on in the movies, pop culture, weird news, any of that sort of thing. And we'd kind of do our 2-hour show every Friday morning talking about it.
Nice.
That's awesome. I always love doing or hearing those shows where it's just a bunch of people. I like the rotating cast kind of thing. It keeps it really fresh. And I think that's really, really cool. So with that being said, I think that's something that's going to give you a lot of skills, having just like a real conversation with people, especially if it is, just 3 best friends of 7. Important stuff,
For sure.
But that being said, not just here at the Bronc, but just at Rider as a whole, what would you say is one of the most valuable skills that you've learned working both in radio, which you kind of touched on a little bit, as well as just at Rider as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, one of the biggest skills that I picked up in Rider is just, you almost have to put, it's hard to describe. This is going to sound weird, but you almost have to put yourself second. And I mean that as, if you have a job that needs to get done, sometimes you have to do it. You have to suck it up. You have to, deal with, whatever. Oh, I don't really want to go here. Oh, I don't want to do this. Sometimes at the end of the day, you have to make those, annoying or hard choices or whatever it is. And I mean, I've learned that, working with John Moses, I think he can agree too that, I'll get, I would always get those phone calls at, 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yep.
Bob, why didn't this get scheduled? Why didn't this happen? Why didn't that happen? So I'd roll out of bed there at 6 a.m, groggily drive back to campus and, get into the radio station and adjust whatever log needed to be adjusted or anything like that. And you just you really learn how to stay on top of it, but also roll with the punches and, kind of accept when you've had issues, just kind of say, you know what, you're right, and learn from those mistakes and just kind of step up from there.
Yeah.
I mean, we have luckily now not to age you, Bob, but the advancement of technology, there is a way for us to access anything that we do here at the radio station from our own personal laptops. So thankfully, if I ever do something wrong, I can just pop one onto my laptop and I don't have to drive all the way to campus. And it's
nice.
It is so nice. Like, it is such a luxury.
Yeah.
So, because
we never had that. We never had that offered to us when I was there. The technology was there. We just weren't allowed to do it.
Yep. Yeah. Now we're kind of cheating in a way.
Yeah. Take it for granted. You don't realize how useful it is.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
So again, I'm totally aging you right now, and I'm saying not to age you, but it's not making it any better.
Not to age you, but totally going to age you here.
Yes.
It's a little disrespectful, Kadie.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. When you were coming in as a freshman, so you already knew that you wanted to come to the Bronc. Same with me. Mm-hmm. And I believe same with Dan. Yeah. But all three of us can say that coming in as a freshman, that we knew that this was the place that we were going to be at, and we wanted to spend our however many years here. So if let's say you came here as a freshman and all of us don't know really what we're doing. So let's say like you come back here and you see a freshman. Like this year we are going to put on another radiothon. Our last radiothon, we raised almost $60,000, and we brought a lot of alumni back, and they did a lot of their own shows, stuff like that. And it was great to see all of the alumni interact. At the time I was only a sophomore. I'm going to be a senior now, but it was great to see all of the alumni interact with the younger students and give them advice. So like if you were to come back and do the radiothon, which you totally should, subtle plug, what advice, I guess, would you give to a freshman if they're like, Bob, I'm really struggling. I don't know how to balance all of this, and I'm really stressed out. Like, what do you wish that you could say to that freshman?
I mean, the biggest thing is have fun. Have fun with it. Don't stress too much. And I know it's a lot easier said than done. The biggest thing is just manage about your time. My biggest advice for anyone who's, stressed out about a million things going on is write everything down that you have to do. Whether there's a deadline, whether, you feel like you have a million things. I'm a big lister. I actually have my list of stuff that I'm going through today, and just brain dump everything as soon as it, pops in your head, write it down.
Right.
Once that's all down there, take a look at your list, and then you'll say, oh, you know what? That's not too bad. Or if there is still a lot, just kind of go through and deadline things like, okay, I know this is due next week. I have this one coming up next week. I can worry about that one later. That's a later Bob problem. And, kind of focus on what's most important right now. And then the other stuff you'll get to when you get to it. You're going to get it done. Just kind of break things down in little digestible chunks, as opposed to, there's this giant mountain of work that you have to do. Just break down little pebbles, maybe a little boulder here and there, but nothing too crazy.
Love it.
Yeah. So I think, I believe this is our last question of this segment for right now. So I just wanted to kind of take it a little bit away from, college and the Bronc and Rider, and go more into, your professional career outside of, the college stuff. And I want to know what has working at a professional radio station, what has that taught you? And, has working here, been directly applied to what you do in your professional radio? And have you gone farther and farther than expected, Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, what I've learned at Rider, absolutely, specifically with the Bronc, absolutely carries on into any professional setting that I've worked in. Once I graduated Rider, I started working for Beasley Media Group. They were Greater Media at the time, but Magic 98.3, 1450 WCTC, and just learning the different things that I picked up at Rider as far as how events work, going out to like DJ different appearances and things like that. Really using the professionalism that we were taught doing events for the Bronc really helped kind of set me ahead. Even in my interview, when I interviewed there, my one boss literally said, "All right, here's our equipment, set it up." And that was my second round job interview, setting up their audio equipment that I had never seen before. But I used what I, learned at Rider to kind of work on that, and I wound up getting the job. And, here I am, however many years later, at a completely different company, but still, working in promotions and all that kind of stuff. Between that and just kind of sitting there and having fun. I mean, the different shows, and sometimes I'd put my foot in my mouth and saying, "Oh, hey, we should do this crazy idea," and John turning around saying, "Yeah, let's do it." And I'm like, "No, that was a joke, but I guess I have to do this crazy idea that I said we should do." Kind of helps you break out of your shell almost, and almost create that different persona than what you may be off the air versus on the air. But it's definitely been a lot of fun, and just using stuff I've learned being at the Bronc.
Yeah, I mean, at least I can only speak to myself. I don't know if Dan wants to add on here to finish us off. But coming to the Bronc, I mean, I knew that I wanted to do something with like talking, because I don't shut up, and I knew that that it was a great place to be around, like the environment and the way that people carry themselves. I was very impressed by that. So like what you were saying with the professionalism, I mean, I can't thank this place enough, honestly, because the way that freshman Kadie walked in to the way that now hopefully senior Kadie is walking out, I give it all credit to here, and all credit to the people here, and John, and all the things I've done here. So hopefully you guys agree, and hopefully I'm not just saying that to say that.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah, no. Yeah, honestly, I mean, I wouldn't be where I am today if it weren't for the Bronc, for especially John Moses. He's definitely helped me out a lot in my career, where even today I can text and be like, "Hey, here's this thing that's going on. John, what do you think?"
Yeah.
And kind of utilize, all of John's experience, between PST and all the other stations that, I'm also with now as well. So, I mean, just kind of using as much help as you can. It's definitely going to get you far.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that is going to end our first segment of Alumni in Action. Make sure you guys stay tuned for our second segment with Bob Giuquinto. We will be right back after these underwriting announcements on 107.7 The Bronc.
you losing focus, huh? Well, don't worry, y'all. Alumni in Action is back from the underwriting announcements here on 107.7 The Bronc.
All right. Welcome back to Alumni in Action. I'm your host, Dan Logis. Joining me is, as always, Kadie, DiGiuseppe, and this is our second half of Alumni in Action. Joining us as well is Bob Giuquinto, a Rider University alumni from the class of 2013. So, just to jump right back into where we left off, you had briefly mentioned that you worked for a bunch of different stations, and so one of the things that I was interested, because you talked about doing certain events and promotional stuff for all these different radio stations. What is it like working for such a wide variety of stations? Because I'm certain they all operate differently. There's probably some overlap, yes, but I'm certain they have different things. So how do you make that adjustment to work between so many different, stations and operations?
Yeah, I mean, every radio station has their own voice, and it's definitely one of those things where you kind of have to keep in mind, all right, what radio station, who am I today? Because right now I'm the promotions director for Town Square Media's Trenton office, as well as our Jersey Shore office. So I run 5 radio stations promotionally. In Trenton, I have New Jersey 101.5 and 94.5 PST. 101.5 is very different from PST. 101.5 is news talk during the week and then classic hits on the weekends, whereas PST is contemporary hits radio, CHR, basically top 40. Those are very different audiences, very different listeners. And when you're out at events, you kind of have to remember that because, I'll be out at an event on, a Saturday with PST. And, they're always talking about how they love Chris Joe in the morning show and the brand new lineup that we have rolled out on PST. And, I could do an event with 101.5 and they could talk about how much they love, Dominski and Moore, or they love Bill Spadia, or, any of that kind of stuff. And doing events for them is very different. Same deal kind of goes for our shore stations as well, because I also run promotions for 94.3 The Point, 105.7 The Hawk, and 92.7 WOBM. And, those are different stations as well. The Hawk is classic rock. OBM is music from the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, and who'd I forget? OBM, so OBM is 80s, 90s, 2000s. The Hawk is classic rock, and 94.3 The Point is top 40. So again, very different listenership, very different, demographics, age group, that sort of thing. So you always have to try to remember who your audience is. You can, thanks for rocking with 105.7 The Hawk. Can't really say that with, OBM or The Point, Thanks for talking to New Jersey 101.5. I mean, you can say it's another station, but it doesn't make as much sense as it would with 101.5. So it's those little differences that you kind of have to remember. Okay, what is my station voice today? How does that affect, the listeners, and what do we do while we're out there? That's kind of one of the big things. The other stuff, the mechanics of it is all the same no matter what you do in promotions, no matter what radio station or even what company you're at, because, you're always going to go out. You're always going to have a tent, a table, tablecloth, giveaways, prizes, games, things like that. It's more of the voice, the sound, and maybe even some of the games that you play could be a little different, whether it's, music trivia, pop culture trivia, whether it's a card game or you're just rolling dice to try to, you roll a 10 or a 5, you win a prize if it's 101.5. But if you're playing, if you're doing an event with Point, maybe you have to roll a 9, a 4, or a 3 or something along those lines. Just kind of thinking on your toes and finding different ways to have fun.
Yeah, for sure. Wow, I didn't know that you worked for all of those radio stations, first off. Yep. And then second off, I bet you now, because there's been a couple years having, been post-grad and being out of college, and you've gone to all of these different events, like you just said, with all of these different radio stations, it doesn't have to be about Town Square. So I guess my question is, for the different radio stations that you've worked at, like, was there one time maybe that like you were like, wow, like I'm just super proud of myself right now. Like, I can't believe I just did all of that. Or, I'm really happy that this went exactly the way I planned it, because I was working really hard on planning this event and it went great. Can you talk a little bit about like one of your proudest moments that has happened post-grad in your career?
Yes, so I can think of a few.
Perfect.
One of the events that we did back, I want to say 2019, New Jersey 101.5 did a stuffed animal drive for the New Jersey State PBA, the Police Benevolence Association, where we had a couple of different clients that would put donation boxes in their front lobby area, and listeners were invited to donate stuffed animals to give to police, where if a child is in a crisis situation, say there's a car accident and the child's really scared, we would then donate these teddy bears to the police, and the police officer would give the kid a teddy bear to, hug and try to make the kid feel just a little bit better. Our first year, we raised, I want to say, over 8,000 bears to donate to the PBA. Which was such a cool moment. Counting them was a whole other story, but just being able to go in and we showed up at the PBA office with trailers and trailers. All three of our station vans were filled. The PBA actually had to come later to bring a couple more of their trailers because we filled an entire room in the radio station with bears, floor to ceiling. Wow. That was such a cool opportunity.
That is crazy.
Another really fun event that we did actually this past May, 105.7 The Hawks morning show is called Free Beer and Hot Wings, and they're a nationally syndicated Town Square media show that is based out of Michigan. And every year they'll go to a few different markets across the country and they'll do a live show and everything like that. We did one for them last year. We did another one for them this year. And myself, my promotions coordinator, Corey, and who's also another Rider alum, Corey Koch, the two of us, along with our team of 10 interns, did an amazing job just kind of setting up, making sure clients were happy. We sold tickets. Listeners were ecstatic. We had VIP tickets. We had all this other stuff. And just having everything come together so perfectly was awesome. Yeah. It was really cool. And, station made some money off of it, which is, also a great, great opportunity. Mm-hmm. But just seeing my team come together, we have a fairly small team to cover 5 radio stations. But the fact that we all kind of came together and knocked it out of the park is just a testament to, just the great staffing and the great team that we have right now with us.
Totally. That's awesome. With that, again, something that you kind of touched on, which is, working these promotion things. I personally am of the belief that anything that is sort of, artistically inclined is, highly emotional. There's a lot of personal emotion that goes into these things, hosting these events. And so for someone that does want to work, promotions events, what is some advice that you would give to someone who wants to do something like that? And, if you're making all the creative decisions, how do you really drive with that and, keep that going?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing I have for you is have fun, be yourself, be outgoing, and don't be afraid of rejection, for lack of a better phrase. I work with interns pretty much every single day, and it's really cool to see the growth that the interns have, because you start your first event, you're either super nervous or you're ready to go, you're ready to hit the ground running, and both can be totally fine. But watching the growth from that point where they're like, oh, hey, hi, do you want to come over and play this game? Like, I'm a little scared, to the intern's last event where I kind of just stand there, and the interns are like, yeah, no, Bob, I got this. Don't worry about it. That's pretty cool to see. But watching the interns come out of their shell and, you know, interact with the listeners and say, you know, hey, come on over, spin the prize wheel. We've got a bunch of tickets we're giving away. We have tickets to see Ed Sheeran. We have this, we have that. And, oh, you didn't win? You know what? That's fine. Here, take a pen, take a cup, have fun, you know, all that kind of stuff. It's, you know, I always tell the interns that the promotions department is typically the face of the radio station.
Yes.
Yep.
Because, you know, let's face it, when you're sitting in your car, you're listening to the radio, you just hear people chat. You hear music. That's about the only interaction that you really get, unless you're calling or texting or any of that kind of thing. But when you're out at that event, when you're out at a, you know, the county fair or whatever other event is going on, you know, you become that extension of the radio station. You're always going to remember, you know, that interaction where, you know, oh, you know, a parent brings their two kids up to the table, they spin the wheel, one kid gets a pen, one kid gets a cup. Well, why did kid A get a pen when kid B got a cup? They're going to want something else. So, you know, yeah, you have to kind of keep that in mind and just have fun and be that lasting, that lasting memory for the kids. Perfect example of this for myself, actually. I was probably 5 or 6 years old, and the Trenton Thunder did a promotion that was sponsored by 97.5 PST back in the day. And Kadie, you were saying you're aging me. I'm aging myself now. So PST was doing like this kids dance off kind of thing where the winner would win $97.50. It was sponsored by PST. You know, little 5-6-year-old me is dancing in his seat, and somehow I wound up winning. And the in-arena host of the Trenton Thunder at the time was also the morning show host for PST, John Moses. And Moses came down and handed me, you know, a check for $97.50 from PST right then and there. And here I am 30 some odd years later in that position with PST. So, you know, you always have those connections that, you know, that really mean something when it comes to radio and just that personal interaction.
It's like a totally full circle moment right there for you.
Yes.
That is
Absolutely.
that is just crazy, by the way.
And I'm pretty sure Moses still remembers that too.
Oh, he probably does. He probably remembers exactly what he ate for breakfast that morning too.
Yep.
Probably.
So now we're getting to the end of today's episode. So to wrap things up, and I know Dan's going to ask another question as well, but maybe for myself to wrap things up. For students that, you know, like I said, I'm going to be a senior in the fall, and you've been there already. You've been a senior before, and you've kind of figured things out. But for students that, you know, are sitting in my shoes and feel like maybe they don't have it all figured out, especially when that post-grad life is quickly approaching, what advice do you would you offer them for somebody like in this career field? If, you know, for me, even going into my senior year, or somebody that is that had just finished, that had just graduated last year, to break into that industry, what advice would you like to give them?
So for radio specifically, don't be afraid to, you know, take whatever opportunity is, you know, given to you. I actually, when I was in college, I absolutely hated doing promotions events. I would try to find every excuse to actually not do promotions events. And here I am now, the promotions director.
Right.
You know, the other piece of advice for me, I was actually dead set on working for a minor league hockey team that was in the area. And, you know, I had interned for them for a couple of years, and all of a sudden the team folds, team doesn't exist anymore, the job isn't there anymore, and I was just kind of left flat out with pretty much nothing prepped. So my biggest piece of advice is record everything, save copies of everything you do, every show, every shift, every interview, and hold on to it. Hoard all of that audio, cut together multiple demos, keep all of that together, and then you can sit there and adjust and add different things. Sometimes some stations, if they're looking for demos, maybe even cut a custom demo for that station, really listen into that station and, record yourself doing a couple of breaks, making it sound like you're on that station. And those PDs, very well could appreciate that. Different things like that, just kind of hold on to it and, just submit everything. And if you're given an opportunity, even if it's like a part-time on-air opportunity, everything is content. Everything is going to help you, get that full-time position. So take the small things that will always, eventually lead to that bigger thing.
Right.
Yeah. So I think to wrap it up with our final question, it's the question that we always go back to, and I think it's a very important one, especially for us working at this radio station, and that is, what does being a Bronc alum mean to you now?
Honestly, it's great. Being a Bronc alum is so cool to say that, I was back at the Bronc before it was, a nationally ranked college radio station, before it won, before it was, nominated for Marconi Awards, before any of that kind of stuff. It is so cool to sit there and say, all right, I kind of helped set the foundation to what the Bronc is now. And it's so cool to see. And anytime, someone says, oh yeah, I do stuff with the Bronc, absolutely, I will always, help them out with, whatever needs to be done. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, we did just get some news as of recent that the 107.7 Bronc was nominated once again for a Marconi Award as College Radio Station of the Year. This is
That's awesome.
Yes, literally found out before we got on this call. So that was our meeting, in case you were wondering, Bob. That was the
that is
meeting
so cool.
that we were on. Dan and I, we were watching the live stream with John. So it was cool. So yes, that is so great that, Dan and I kind of reaped the benefits of all your hard work. But
You were the foundation. You let us get to this point. So thank you specifically for this.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of fun. Not to do the typical alumni, but I remember when the Bronc was in the basement of the BLC, the engineer at the time and myself, engineer Neil, him and I renovated the station to what it was before it moved moved now to the Fine Arts Building.
Yep.
And just kind of seeing the growth and seeing, how professional things look. And heck, even doing something like this, through Zoom is something I never could have been able to imagine doing back when I was in college. So, seeing how the Bronc has progressed, and there's a reason, it's constantly being nominated for Marconi Awards is, all the work that you guys do. And it's hard to get nominated, let alone nominated multiple times. And the fact that you guys are doing it is just a testament to, the legacy that the Bronc has.
Yes, well, we couldn't have done that without you, Bob, without you setting that foundation. So, like Dan said, and in all seriousness, we of course we do thank you for all of that foundation that you did set for us and the Bronc, and we thank you also for joining us. This was so great to get to talk to you and get to know you a little bit more, Bob.
Yeah, this has been awesome. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Of course. Unfortunately, that is going to wrap up this month's episode of Alumni in Action. We'd like to thank Bob once again for joining us, and we will see you guys next month. Make sure you stay tuned to 107.7 The Bronc for the biggest hits and the best variety.
You've been listening to Alumni in Action on 107.7 The Bronc. tune in Sundays to keep up with your favorite Rider Bronx alumni. For more information and to listen to past episodes, visit 1077thebronc.com/alumni in action. And now back to the biggest hits and best variety on 1077 The Bronc.